How are data and analytics empowering the golf industry? Let's jump into it. My name is Paul de Siba. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tag Marshall. Word of warning, I'm not a golfer. I am a former rugby player for what it's worth, so I have not had much opportunity to play. At the same time, I've spent the last 10 years or so honing my skills in data analytics and efficiency management software systems. So this is something that I, as one of the founders of Tag Marshall, have been able to bring into the space. And so far, our journey has really proven that we're onto something exciting. So we have since tracked 7 million rounds of golf. We've got almost 1 billion data points collected, certainly by end of the season. The courses we touch on and work with is about 200 at the moment, and they're in 9 countries. So we've got a nice and broad spread of information that we can draw from. We are official partners of EasyLinks, which is a PGA Tour company, and we're research and technology partners to the AJGA and the USGA. We also work with amazing courses. Oakmont, Carnoustie, which we all watched recently at the Open, Erin Hills, they were the first adopters of our program in the US. That was now 3.5 years ago. Kiowa Ocean Course, Pinehurst, Whistling Straits, Valhalla, some really amazing names, and this list is not complete. And obviously there's a California icon that I'm not allowed to mention, but suffice it to say that Sean Smith from Pebble Beach is on this very webinar, checking in on us. There's already somebody putting up their hand. That might be him. Okay, no, it's Pebble Beach, obviously, Sean. There's only one, and we're delighted to have you on board. And you are a fantastic beta tester, innovator for our team, and certainly also getting a lot of value for your team. So thanks for allowing me to say. Really good. Okay, let's move on. So we obviously don't just work with these top-end courses. There's a nice big spread across right down to $25 green fee courses. And in fact, in the daily fee space, the majority of our customers are under $50. And this is obviously where the biggest amount of golf gets played. We're working with walking courses, we're working with cart courses, we're working with courses that provide a combination mobility. So you can already see that we've virtually got everyone covered in terms of the spectrum of the market. Okay, let's get back to our topic. How are data and analytics empowering the golf industry? So there are 5 questions we want to answer. The state of the industry. This is not really exhaustive, it's just a highlights package, and a lot of this won't be new to you. How to be relevant in the golf world of tomorrow. We only have half an hour, remember. Key objectives of golf course operations, what's important. How are data and analytics empowering the golf industry? So that is our key focus, what's happening right now. And then we're looking at golf course intelligence in the on-course and operations environment, which forms part of this. So let's get started. Industry data, where are we at? Sorry, that's the wrong picture. Here's what's happening this year is Tiger has returned, and obviously that's great for golf. And those numbers will certainly show once the data for the year will be released by the relevant industry bodies. There are a total of 14,794 golf facilities in the US. 15.5 new courses have opened, 96 new reopened after renovations, and 205 courses have closed. So there's quite a clear trend here, is that more courses are closing. A lot of courses are renovating and doing better to do better, and not much new development. There's a lot of course operations that are renovating. Here's 1,100 since 2006. So basically, there's a bit of a shrinkage in the market, maybe not unhealthy, and a lot of people are looking to reinvest and provide a sustainable future and attractive course. In terms of rounds played, obviously there's slight variance, but there's nothing to be too alarmed about. And I believe that we've got somebody from Pellucid on this webinar, so they might have a thing or two to add to the question of weather and climate impact. And this year we know that in the north, certainly the spring started a little bit late, so that would have had an impact. But again, nothing major in terms of fluctuations. So a few less courses, participation is fairly stable. What are the industry concerns? The key one is attracting a younger generation of players, and that is quite an obvious one in terms of importance, because if a sport is to have a future, it needs to happen now. Other industry concerns are the golf course expenses, and obviously this is broad. Attracting a younger generation of workers, interesting enough, goes alongside the younger generation of players. So you also want a younger team. One of the concerns is unrealistic member and customer expectations. Now this is a hairy one, because we are customers elsewhere in the restaurant space, in the supermarket, we're customers of a car dealership. And what are our expectations versus, are they realistic? Or do we actually care whether they're realistic? We'll just go with it. Cost of play is one of the concerns. Saturated market, which is starting to self-regulate. Pace of play, one of the concerns. Regulation, image of golf, and course closures. Course closures for most courses should be an opportunity rather than a concern. Okay, so we want to look at, having now looked at this very briefly, how to be relevant in the golf world of tomorrow. So this is something to have lots and lots of discussion about. Again, here's somebody who's important today, but who's really important tomorrow are these guys. I can picture my two sons, they're 6 and 8, and can I picture them walking on the fairway learning the game of golf? It's a stretch for me because I don't have a golf background, but this is something that golf needs to tackle so that my kids and everyone's kids can see themselves here and can have fun. And it's a joy to for them to join, and they have the right opportunities. And I spoke to a golf manager the other day, and he said he watched a junior event, and he was concerned at how little fun those kids were having, and they were youth. They were 14 to 17-year-olds, and he thought that this is something that any youth golf bodies really need to focus on. So they're having fun, they're living that camaraderie on the course, and it's not just about the score and getting through as quickly as possible. And so that was quite an interesting feedback. Tomorrow starts today. So in terms of golfer enjoyment, there are a few things that are key, and there are a few things that we need to be mindful of. And one of the things in terms of what is important to you and what do you think is critical to your enjoyment of the game is course conditioning. And not surprisingly, 80% of respondents say, and that's a USGA survey, that course conditioning is critical. People that they play with, this is something that's not necessarily controllable from a course operator's point of view. But if you are attracting a certain type of player, then you will attract a certain type of friend for that player too. Accessibility and tee time availability. That is a key thing. When can I play the game? How long is it going to take me? Can I get the round that I want to play on a Saturday? Can I get a round in after work? Pace of play, very, very important. And lastly, cost and value. Now, cost is relative. Value certainly is key in the game, and all of these points above have a role to play when it comes to value. And the cost then ultimately is not the essential factor, even though it is, because we want people to play lots of golf, obviously. So the golfer's buying decision, that brings us to those three key factors, is the experience. What type of experience do I want? Do I want world class? Do I want elite? Do I want a course down the road? At what cost? What is it worth to me? Or where's my budget that I'm comfortable with? Or is this a once a year bucket list experience that I'm after? And the time, when can I do this? And how long is it going to take me? So those are the key experience factors and the key buying decision factors. And it's no different to any other experience that I'm buying. And that can be going to the movies, deciding to binge on Netflix. That can be going on holiday. It's all the same in terms of those key metrics are making me tick as a human when I'm deciding on an experience. And the golfer's one looks like this. So what we want to look at is how can it be relevant tomorrow? So what are operations spending budget on right now? Are they spending budget on the right things? So we know that 44% of budget generally goes into course maintenance, 50% into golf operations, labor. That is one bucket, if you will. Then you've got G&A, general admin, you've got building maintenance, and obviously there's a fluctuation, variance depending on daily fee versus private, but not too much actually. So these are the sort of standard pots in terms of budget. So we want to make sure that we're aligning this with what the golfer is after. So they're after level of experience, time, when can I do it? What's my time budget I have? Do I have 6 hours? Do I have 4 hours? Do I have time for a 9-hole? And how much is it going to cost me to become a member at the club? Can I afford that? Is it aspirational? Or in terms of a bucket list course versus let's play a round of golf this Saturday. So the experience factor, conditioning, layout, playability all play a big role. Staff and service level, clubhouse plays a big role, food and beverage, flow and pace. So this is, in terms of the definition, pretty much in line with what the USGA survey says is important for players. Now, what does it look like tomorrow? Like we said, tomorrow is already happening today, and we just have to look at what's working and what's attracting people. And obviously there's your Phoenix Open type event that is very contained, 500,000 people, big spectator value. There's your Topgolf, which pushes the boundaries a little bit. It's shorter, lots of game variations. There's your long drive competitions, which is fun. So the experience, certainly that next generation of player is looking for, and this we saw earlier is a key concern for the industry. How can we get those next generation guys? They want entertainment, they want fun formats, they want shorter, they want easy to learn. At the same time, there is an attraction to the tradition, most certainly. And we're seeing that this works in other sports. I mean, if you're looking at cricket, the traditional game of cricket is 5 days, and people tend to come and go in the stadiums, and they certainly wake up on the last day, especially if it's tight. But there's a new form of cricket, which is 2020 cricket, which is done in just a few hours, and it's hugely entertaining. So this is your watching an entire tournament of golf versus a Phoenix Open comparison. The time question in terms of how can we be relevant tomorrow, we need to be accessible. We need to be consistent in what we're providing, and we need to be flexible. So this is where the college night specials that Topgolf is offering is interesting, because how can we get more yield out of our asset, which is our course? In Asia, night golf is not foreign. So say in Singapore or Hong Kong, because there's so much demand and so little courses, so they put the floodlights on, they've got special balls, and out they go. Then there's also the cost question. To play a round of, or have some beers and play a little bit of Topgolf really doesn't cost a lot. Also, how much time do I have available for what I want to do? So there's pay-by-hole formats now, there's dynamic pricing, it's a question of value. When I watched the US Open early in the year, the USGA was pushing the 9-hole format a lot, and obviously there's Super Sixes and there's lots of things happening. There's no definite answer, but one of the key things that's important if you want to be relevant tomorrow is align with market expectations and demands. So we need to be respectful of tradition and hold on to it. At the same time, we need to look at what does this next generation player want and what is the market expecting. We need to work smarter, because otherwise we can't be there tomorrow, and we need to be sustainable. So those are the key things. So this is not a definite answer session, but if we do those things, and then we'll certainly be there and shape that future. So one of the things that we're looking at is data, and data also comes out of surveys. So one of those survey results was that golfers between the ages of 25 to 44 would like to up the pace by 60 to 90 minutes from the average 4.5-hour round time. So this speaks to the time and time budget they have available. And lastly, with regards to the sustainability question, utilizing data for performance and efficiencies improvement is just key when it comes to working smarter, and it happens on the golf course already. So there's key objectives of course operations, and a lot of these get fulfilled by using data. So let's look at them quickly. So what we've learned in tracking 7 million rounds of golf and obviously having a big handle on that on-course experience question is enhancing the golfer experience is paramount. That is the absolute key reason for existence for the golf course. They want to provide the best possible experience. They want to boost efficiencies. They want to do this smarter, optimize the flow, which is actually more important than the pace, funny enough. There's also research behind this. So if the flow is right, and if people are moving at a good flow rate rather than quickly, this is more important than doing it fast. At the same time, we know that especially the younger generation, they just don't have the time, so we need to accommodate them. Improve service delivery. We're a business like anyone else, and save costs and unlock revenue. So those are the key factors for operators. So just to quickly realign those with what's important to the golfer, and that's where we need to just look back and say we have to be respectful of traditions, but looking beyond the historic metrics if we want to play a leading role and be ahead of the curve in the future. So how are data and analytics empowering the golf industry? There's lots happening already, and had we had this session 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it would have looked differently, obviously, because technology is moving very fast. So the first question is, why do we want to look at data? Because data on its own, on the left, is really not worth all that much. It's worth something when it turns into information, when it turns into knowledge, when it turns into insight, and that's when it really has power as business intelligence and actionable data. So this is when you can really use the data for a whole range of uses. So if we're looking at the golf course, and in terms of a time budget that a player is making available with his friends or his colleagues or his business partners or his son, or her rather, there would be a certain expectation as to how long this would take. So there's arrive and check-in, there's some putting, driving, and warm-up, and obviously I want to be out on the course for anywhere between 3.5, 4.5 hours. Then I need to shower and dress, and then I want burgers and beers. So this is your standard Saturday, your standard if you're getting off work early, but it is a big commitment, 6.5 hours. So in terms of data and where we're using data, so there are two key areas here where course operators are pretty good with data. One is at the start of this is the booking. If you think back 5-10 years ago, there was a lot of phone booking, email booking, manual booking, and now this all happens online. Fantastic. We can gather data in real time. Customer details, we know what payment method they've used, we know their booking frequency, we understand demand, key times and days from a booking point of view, but also from when do they want to play. Their sales trends, that's all data that we're gathering, and we also can understand and utilize data to get marketing efficiencies and return on investment on our marketing. This is where data is extremely powerful, especially when it comes to online marketing. A lot of you guys will notice and use it, or you even have departments that use it really well. Then on the far right, at the end of the round, there's data that we're using in the pro shop and for food and beverage. So we're gathering customer profiles, order trends, we're tracking loyalty, vouchers, promotions, is that all working? There's inventory management, obviously, that comes with this. There's sales staff performances, there's events tracking, all those things. So there's lots of data that gets gathered at the start and at the finish. And the underlying data that makes the course tick is obviously financial performance data. And this is beautifully when numbers are really helpful because there are data inherently. Okay, there's a few questions. Let me just quickly see. Okay, Sean Smith is saying he completely agrees with the flow statement. Thank you. So the flow is more important than the pace. So if I have a good flow on the course, just going back to that, and sorry, I didn't pick up that statement earlier, Sean. If I have a good flow on the course and I can move along and I don't get held up all the time, then I don't mind if it takes a little bit longer. However, I can have a quicker round in terms of turnaround time on the course, but if I get held up all the time and the flow is jeopardized, that is when my experience suffers. So thanks for getting your opinion on that. Okay, let's jump ahead. So what we want to do is use data and analytics to quantify and manage business performance. And like we said, we're doing this really well when it comes to the booking and when it comes to the point of sale at the start and at the end of the round. So the question is, and that's important, obviously, because the booking, the green fees, is 55% of our revenue, and in the private space, your revenue it gets generated differently, and it's a per member value to you in the course, but ultimately it comes down to how much golf can they play, and are you attractive to them. And then the pro shop and food and beverage on the far end, that's 30% of the revenue. So it makes a lot of sense that we're trying to track this, because this is a lifeline of our course. Now, if we want to use data and analytics to quantify and manage business performance, when we're talking about manage, that is when real-time data really comes into its own, because we can quantify business performance with data at the month end or quarterly or annually. But if we really want to manage business performance, that's when we need real-time data. So let's look at opportunities outside of the space. And the key one is right here in the middle, and that is the 4 hours, 3.5, 5.5, however long hours that we're spending out on the course. And are we using data where it really matters here? So we've got the start and the end of this experience trackable, and we're understanding as well in terms of data. So what about the main chunk of it? What about that on course and the course itself? So data and maintenance management. This is, in terms of future and data opportunity, massive, massive, massive. Why? Because the on-course management eats up 60% of your budget, and that is obviously making sure that it's conditioned well, but also managing the staff that works on it. So 60% of the budget deserves a really good look in, because if you can shave efficiencies out of this, then it's straight bottom line. So data and maintenance management is key. And this is something where golf is only starting to come into its own. But why is it important also if we're aligning this back to what the player wants? Because 82% of players believe course conditioning is a crucial enjoyment factor. So yes, spend your money there, absolutely, and track it, because that's what the golfer expects. Now, if you're looking at opportunities with regards to data and with regards to technology in this space, a lot of this feels a bit like Star Trek, holodeck, sci-fi right now. So you might look at a drone imagery that looks at irrigation patterns and looks to optimize, for instance. You might look at self-driving vehicles. You might look at GPS tracking of staff and of utility vehicles out there. And obviously, there's data opportunities that come with this. It was really not easy to find examples for this, simply because there isn't much out there just yet. It's really the Star Trek and holodeck first generation movers right now that are daring and out there and looking to try this. And obviously, there's lots of learnings that need to go with this. But tomorrow, all the stuff is going to be just another tool. And that's a reality. And tomorrow happens very, very quickly. And every golf course that has the means is going to be using those tools. And like in any product journey, it's a question of, first, people laugh at it. Right now, we might laugh at self-driving vehicles, we might laugh at drones on the golf course. Then they fight it, like, no, we don't need that. That's crazy. That's holodeck sci-fi stuff. And then the next thing they embrace it. So, oh, why didn't we do this ages ago? It works so nicely, and it's saving us money, and we can work smarter. So this is where the on-course opportunity is huge, and especially because we're plowing 60% of our budget into that. So the other opportunity that we have in terms of data is the experience management, because people don't come to the golf course to spend money on green fees and do some practice swings and then have a shower and a beer. They want to come to a golf course to play an amazing round and have an experience. So how can we help the experience along with regards to data, and what can we do so that experience is top-notch, and that we value the time of the people out there, and that we make sure that they have the best possible take home and come back again next week. And why is that important? Because ultimately people are buying this experience, and it consists of and your revenue that it drives is 55%. So does it deserve attention? Yes, absolutely. And more importantly, it also impacts the 30% other side of the revenue scale, which is food and beverage and merchandise revenue. And why does it impact it? I'll show you just now. Because if we don't do this well, and we are eating into that 6.5-hour time budget that a player is making available by doing two things, which starting him or her 20 minutes late because the course is busy and we can't get the people through at the allotted start times. And then we're having them play 40 minutes longer than they expected. So now we're stealing an hour of time effectively out of their 6.5 hours. They still need to shower and dress. And then unfortunately, often there is no time for that burger and beer. So in this case, the on-course experience has directly impacted the food and beverage and pro shop merchandise opportunity that happens after the round. So that is where, again, it makes sense to look at doing this smarter, better, and controlling it so you can have consistency. And another reason why it makes sense is because 74% of golfers believe that pace is crucial to the enjoyment of their round. Sean, you would replace this with flow, and so would I. At the same time, we need to be respectful of time because that is a massive, massive factor, especially with the generation of tomorrow. I'm seeing there's another question. Q&A at the bottom of the screen. Let me have a look. Okay, there's a question. As a lifelong golfer who really plays now, that I have 2 young kids, that times suck. A round of golf is a definite impact. Absolutely. Have you done any studies with your data about how shortening a round to 12 holes would have both on participation rates and also on club revenues? Would it possibly lead to increased revenue in food and beverage with the extra time post round? So I can totally sympathize with you on the 2 young kids. I've got 2 young boys. And if you ask me, could I find 6.5 hours in my week to play a round of golf? That would be hard for me to do. So to those of you who can, keep it up. So I would actually like to park this question. It's a very good question. And if maybe we can get Sean or somebody else to consider answering it. So just to repeat the question quickly, time suckage and the time risk is a big impact, and shortening round to 12 holes, for instance, would that have an impact on participation rates or club revenues? There's certainly a lot of this happening. There's a pay by hole golf where you can say, I've got time for 4 holes, let me go and play them. There's new initiatives that are coming up. Okay, here's Sean from Pebble. He's saying we're testing golf balls with Caddy at Spanish Bay and Spyglass to improve flow and pace. Took a long time to get to the point of testing. So here, that's innovative, where you're looking at not just a traditional form of mobility, but something different. And if you book this right, and if you can probably shave a fair amount of time off your round. Because it allows better mobility, and obviously the golf balls are light, they can go virtually anywhere on the course, and they're not restricted to cart paths. So this is one thing. So there's certainly opportunity. We haven't done the research ourselves, but the shorter formats, and going back to what I said earlier around the 9-hole rounds being advertised so heavily by the USGA around the US Open at Shinnecock, that really speaks for itself in terms of the time budget, time availability as part of that 3 key metrics, which is experience, time, and cost. It's more and more of a factor. Okay, let's move ahead. So we were talking about the importance of doing experience tracking and using data for those 4.5 hours, and how can we do this well? And we understand the importance because the golfer says so, okay? So that brings us to our last point, and that is golf course intelligence and the on-course and operations environment. So again, what we're trying to do is enhance the player experience and on-course experience. That is a key and an absolute key point for any golf operation out there. And how can we do this smarter with data? And the reason it's important because it drives our revenue and it drives the food and beverage and merchandise revenue at the end of it if we do it well. So how do we do it? So one of the classic metrics when it comes to that is to just look at average round times. And average round times, while they are something that's obvious and easy to track in terms of this is when they start, this is when they come off, there's a lot in this that doesn't see the light of day, and that is that if we're working out the averages, if we even get to working out the averages, because of a lot of data in the day-to-day operations on the golf course dies on a piece of paper and never actually gets analyzed. So if we get to working out the averages, what we would find is, and here's an example on your left, that's an Arizona course that plays with the goal time of the magical 4 hours. They're coming through in March, which is their busy season, at 4:06, and you would say, hey, that looks good, we'll take that. But what they found is that their early morning rounds actually skew the data really, really drastically. So those just swish through. They're really quick, and especially also member play, because they know the course so well. And so what they found is that even though those were the numbers on the left, only 27% of the rounds were actually on pace. And another small percentage was within 10 minutes of that. And that left them with almost half of their play was 20 minutes over, and a really big chunk, about 10-15%, was 30 to plus 40 minutes over. And you know what happens if you're going 40 minutes over, your start times also get jeopardized. And that's when we exactly have that exact situation that we illustrated to you just now. Your start time is 20 minutes out, 10 minutes out, 50 minutes out, and you're playing somebody 40 minutes over, you're stealing an hour of their time. And that is when a person like Tyler, who asked this great question earlier, then says, I just can't play as much golf as I want to. So they realize this is not, this is an opportunity. They have an opportunity to improve almost 73% of their play. So let's look at how this actually plans out if you do it well. And I'm going to show you what this looks like in our world in terms of the on-course experience tracking and using data. So here's the data results. This course you're all familiar with, that's Carnoustie in Scotland, and they obviously know how to run an operation, and they've done it forever. They have got a tremendous amount of really, really high quality staff. At the same time, they also get visitors and lots of variables that are difficult to control. So when they first started using our system, they found that the data told them that only 29% of their rounds were on pace. Another 31% were within 10 minutes. And then they had this really nasty 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes over part to their play. And this is obviously where, sure, I'm at Carnoustie and I'm having a fantastic time and the course is well conditioned and all those things are good. However, my flow probably isn't right. I'm getting held up because 3 groups ahead, there's somebody who's just not up to the standard that we need at this course. And now he's impacting 100 other people. So that is what they were finding. And obviously that then goes straight into the food and beverage. Can I now get my Carnoustie cap after the round? And can I have my whiskey at the course? Or is there a tour bus that's hooting and waiting to take me somewhere else? So it's a big experience factor. Now what happens is with data and managing the on-course experience well, you look at the dial on the right, and just a couple of weeks later, they had adjusted and improved to get their on pace through at 53% and within 10 minutes at 35%. And they're completely done away with that pain point, 30 minutes over and 40 minutes over. So sure, you can see on the left, the average round time 441, on the right, the average round time 425. That's a sizable difference. At the same time, what they've really done is they've managed to flow better. And I want to show you how they did that. And you can already see that this is a massive experience improvement for all the players at the course in that month. So in our world, and again, we were talking about holodeck, sci-fi stuff. So this is happening right now at Pebble Beach and many, many other courses. We are making sense of all those moving parts on the course with really smart algorithms that help the management. So there's a real-time preemptive management aspect to the system that can be used. Let me just check in on a quick question here. Okay, there's Christoph Bort from Alcanada in Spain. The question is, what did they do to improve the pace at Carnoustie? I'm not sure if Craig has joined. If he has, I would love for him to field that question. There are three key things that they understood about their course better. And I can actually show you as we go through the presentation just now, Christoph, and all those others who want to know. So what we're doing in terms of the real-time preemptive management, we're making sense of all those moving parts. And remember earlier we looked at that progression of data where you're looking at data points, then you're seeing certain data points having certain color, and eventually you're connecting and it becomes intelligence. And this is exactly what our system is doing. So you would know at any time where your biggest risk is on the course, and you will have empowered staff that can now go as experienced managers and help out where it's needed, rather than looking for problems and looking for gaps and often being wrong. So here you can see when this group started, who's on the group, how farther off the pace, and most importantly, what their progress is across the last 5 holes. So the first 2 holes they were fine. They probably lost the ball now, but they're certainly having a big impact. And this is where the algorithm has determined that this group, because they're impacting 2 other groups already early in the round, they're only on the 5th. 6 minutes off the pace, it's not much, but it's going to start hurting your field very, very quickly. So the systems established that, and now whoever's out there, even from the Pro Shop ad hoc, can now have a conversation and make sure that these guys are aware, because they certainly don't want to hold up anybody. So let me jump to another question, if I can. Okay, here's Sean from Pebble. Starting on September 2nd, we notify our guests for the first time ever preemptively regarding pace of play. Okay, so this is a new policy that you are bringing in, and obviously you've got very good marshals and marshals that are really well trained and appropriate in managing your guest experience. So now you are going to not reactively manage the pace, but preemptively, and this is obviously great, and certainly empowered also, I would think, by the technology that you have available. Thanks for that, Sean. Okay, so what this allows us to do, obviously, apart from the real-time opportunity, we now have a record of every round that's played at the course. So that's what you're finding on the left. So that helps the golfer relationship management. And you, especially when it comes to complaints, but also when it comes to member management at a course where you've got the same players playing many, many rounds, you very, very quickly, and the system does that, find out who are my faster players, who are my slower players, what are the pairings that don't work too well, and which players really shouldn't play that 7:30 early round. Then on the right here, you see how we can turn staff into experienced managers simply by providing information to them and giving them the tools so they can add to that information flow. So what they would do if they have a conversation with somebody, which can be a totally positive conversation that's saying, hey, you're slightly out of position. Can you help us get back on track? You're probably not aware. I recommend you do A, B, or C. By the way, the drinks cart's on the 8th hole today, and we've set up a course like this, and there's a bit of a headwind. So now I've added an experience value to the player, and they would say, hey, yes, absolutely. And then I give them a 5-star rating, and I do a quick a drop of what I've told them or what I've recommended. And if they really don't want to be told anything, then that might be a 1-star because they're not compliant. But what happens is the next time somebody has a conversation with them, they would be on the same page. So the other question, and this is where I'm getting back to Christoph's question, what did they do at Carnoustie? Because this is Carnoustie data again. So they understood their daily distribution. So they understood, how does our Monday run? How does our Wednesday run? And how do our tee times run across the day? So this is your 7 to 10, 10 to 11. And obviously you can see here already that 11 to 12 is really painful. And the late afternoon, you have to think back to that pace distribution dial that we looked at just now. So this is your 30, 40 minutes over bar, and this is your on pace bar. So there's hardly anything on pace here, and lots of pain points. Early morning, we're fine. We've got guys going through very, very quickly. Wednesday tend to be fine. Friday tend to be problematic. So they're understanding their days better. That's one thing. So if you understand your days better with that tracking intelligence, you can now plan ahead and you can get staff out there when it matters. Another thing that they did, and I need to jump to the analytics slide of our presentation, which I hope I still have, is that they tracked and understood that their starter accuracy was something that they could improve on. So the starter accuracy means that the starter needs to get the groups off at the correct time and keep the interval intact. Because if the interval, say it's 9 minutes, and your starter sends out one group 2 minutes late and the next group 2 minutes early, he's now reducing that 9 minutes to 5 minutes, and that's causing bottleneck problems very, very quickly, and certainly on the next part 3. So they understood the starter needed to be more accurate, and the starter was now able with the system to self-manage and keep himself accountable. And that was a big, big factor for them. And you can see how that is exactly that month's 2 months 3 comparison, how the distribution changes and how your Saturday is now beautifully on pace. Your really, really bad 12, 11, 12 afternoon round has at least got a lot of green and within 10 minutes, and none of the dark red, which is the 30, 40, 50 minutes over. And one of the things that they also did was they understood that a lot of the players on the fifth and playing down this stretch were going out of bounds, because they could look at the heat map that the system provides. And they saw that a lot of guys have to go and cross over onto the other course and out of bounds, and then obviously go back and play that shot again. And this brings me to the last point that they understood. And this is something that Jim Lombardo from Erin Hills, who, as I said earlier, is one of our first adopters, he said, we just now know where to position our people and when. So they realized that there's certain impact zones on the course where they can have conversations with people at critical times of the day. And they realized that if they want the people, if they're not sure if they've made that 6th hole down here, rather play a safe shot. Because if they play a safe shot, then obviously they don't. There's no risk that they might lose 5 minutes on that hole. So those were the little things. And data and performance management is all about incremental improvement. So if you add all of this up, that's when you get such a big jump in performance, like I've been able to show you just now. There's another chat question. A Q&A question. Tyler asked another question. How do you all take uncontrollable factors such as weather, once in a lifetime rounds into account when measuring times on course? So the weather is certainly a factor that that comes into play with regards to planning, and also with regards to historic data, because weather is a big impact factor. So here's somebody hoping to ask that question. Provisional is the answer, Craig. Malcolm, maybe you want to switch Craig on there so he can answer the question from his side.
Craig, you should be. Thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, Bodo, I think just so that I understand the question a little bit better, Christoph is asking what Carnoustie, what actions they put in place, and you've explained this very well. But I think from my experience, just to weigh in there on the starter accuracy and understanding how the flow of the course got off their first tee was very critical in really addressing their problems. They found once they had understood that well, and you talked briefly to your interval management of the first tee. Once they understood that well, and they put policies in place to make sure that they were getting people off at a very consistent gap time of that first tee, their problems later on in the round dissipated, and then it was about consistent management through the round. So for them, that was critical. I know I'm repeating the point, but I think it bears repeating.
Do you want to answer Tyler Summers' question around uncontrollable factors such as weather or once in a lifetime rounds, bucket list rounds where you want to stop and take a photo or high five your playing buddy? How
Okay.
do we take that into account? And this is something that also pertains to Pebble Beach. Obviously, that is a once in a lifetime course.
Absolutely. I think course managers understand that this is a factor that everyone needs to almost, prepare for. And I know that a lot of our mainstream course or our major courses are almost briefing their caddies in advance to the fact that people may want to do this. So what they do is they empower their caddies, and they almost recommend that caddies preempt these scenarios. So say they've got famous holes, or for example, Sean will be familiar with their closing stretch at Pebble Beach. People really want to take photos there. So what their caddies, for example, may be doing is saying, guys, we're approaching, the 18th tee box. If you want a photo on the cliffs, get ready and give me your phones, and I'll take these photos for you. So they're almost managing the time it takes for people to do this. But at the end of the day, what you have to bear in mind is that experience factor on these high profile courses almost, it's a bit of an excuse for people to ruin someone else's day. And whilst there's a bit of give and take is what I'm trying to say. You've got to actually understand that your time is not more valuable than everyone else's. And if they're pushing that message from the word go, we are valuing all our patrons' experience, not just yours. And we need you to buy into that. You can create an understanding and an awareness around, you need to get around this course in an acceptable way.
Thanks, Craig. Maybe just, Tyler, further to your question of weather. So this is the analytics dashboard that we're feeding all the data into from a planning and goal setting and management point of view. So you can see the weather is part of this. Then what you see here is a month in the life of a course in terms of average round times and also interventions that we had on the various days. Down here on the left is your hole by hole performance over that time period. Obviously, we can drill into a single day and look at how did our hole by hole performance go. And this is just further to what Craig's saying. If a course realizes that a certain hole underperforms by 3 or 4 minutes and there's bottlenecks forming on a regular basis, they can now look at remedying that. One, by educating the players better and preemptively having a conversation around how to play that hole, or by making some adjustments, cutting the rough a bit shorter, taking a tree out, adjusting a bunker, things like that. And because you're constantly looking for data and opportunities, you can then see, has the adjustment had the effect? And again, we're talking about incremental improvements, but if you're shaving 2 or 3 minutes of 3 or 4 holes over the period of 6 weeks, that is fairly considerable in the greater scheme of things, because you can do it every single month that you play. Okay, here's Sean, and I wish that we could actually switch him on, but I noticed earlier when we started that that his microphone wasn't too great. So I'm just going to read his answer. Our biggest issues are the large volume of beginner golfers that decide to play Pebble Beach, and the customer who decides, I have spent all this money, therefore I will play at the pace I want. We are taking incremental steps to put policies in place to address these 2 types of players. First step is preemptive communication. Our next step will be to deliver a very strong message on the first tee and create accountability to the player. And we hope by this time next year, all guests will understand that pace is standard and not an option. So that first tee is what Craig spoke to earlier, and that's also what we discussed in our webinar last week, is how important the starter is with regards to setting that culture and the expectation of the players. And also the starter has a great opportunity to vet the players. What is your handicap? Are you guys fit? Because if somebody says, look, I've just had an ACL operation, I don't know if I'm going to last, then I can preempt that. And Sean, you would agree that sometimes you help transition players that struggle to walk the longer transition areas, and you help them out with a cart, and then all of a sudden they're back on track and they're back in position. So this is something that that you can then preempt, and because you've got a system where anyone can access this information, you can feed data into it, and you can pull data out of it. It helps everyone be on the same page. So we spoke about understanding the daily distribution, understanding the hour by hour and day by day. And we spoke about the heat map opportunity. Actually, we haven't. Sean agrees. We embed a marshal or pace manager with these types of players. So if there is a risk group at an amazing course like Pebble, where everybody has that on their bucket list. But if there's a risk group that you're preempting might have a problem, then you're actually sending somebody along. And at another course, that might be a caddy. And at a third course, that might just be a notification on the system that says, keep an eye. And then we can ad hoc manage that group from the pro shop as needed. And this is your $40 course can do it that way, because obviously you don't have the staff contingent that a high-end resort might have. Just one more minute on the heat map opportunity. So this is something that gets the green keepers quite excited, because they can zoom into this and they can look at the movement of the players at any given time, and obviously also what impact does signage have, what impact does cart parts have, are people compliant? What is the likely wear patterns and compaction of certain areas? You can see that there's big red heat map spots here. So this is something that if you're tracking all the flow on the course, is almost a byproduct that comes in really, really useful. Generation 2, I said earlier, Star Trek holodeck today, and tomorrow it's just another tool. So this is where we're now going. We have a passive tracking unit that we've used for the last few years, and now the market is telling us that why can't we just interface directly with the caddies? Why can't we interface directly with the players? So we now have a new system that we're about to launch that can allow for this, and obviously two-way communication allows for self-management of players, and also you can then use that to add additional functions such as lightning, medical alerts, and also make sure that these devices self-manage in terms of handout and they come back to you. I'm going back to the sci-fi question, but this is very real, and this gets used. And having tracked 7 million rounds, there's a few things that we found, and one of those data trends is that the top 20% performers that are using our system and have been using it also maybe for a little bit longer, they're coming in at almost 95% of rounds of on goal time or within 10 minutes. And sometimes we would advise them to adjust the goal time slightly upwards, work with the system, and then adjust it downwards again, because you sometimes have to do counterintuitive things to validate your findings and also work with the data that is being presented. The average course here comes in at around about 72% on pace and within 10 minutes. And the bottom 20% in terms of performance come in at around 45% on pace or within 10 minutes. And obviously they've got a lot of work to do. And generally those are the courses that are new on the program, or those are the courses that are getting to grips with the opportunity. And like we said earlier, we explained how things are working at Carnoustie and the big jump that they've made in performance. But it needs continuous action and continuous tracking. It's not something that you can fix once and then it's fixed for all time. It's about performance management, and that needs to happen daily. In terms of golf course intelligence and the on-course and operations environment impact, yeah, the round times come down. The starter accuracy improves. The hole by hole time improves. All of those things happen, but what it really brings is an opportunity to run better processes, to have better oversight, to manage performance of the teams much better, to have actionable data, and that ultimately empowers results. And what it allows for is capacity adding, for instance. So this is something where Aaron Hills are really big on this. they're saying, well, we've got more people who want to play, certainly when the weather's amazing and on certain busy days. So if we've got the ability to control our field really well, and there's no risk to the field, then we can add capacity safely. And to them, that is worth a lot of money. So generating revenue comes with this opportunity. So it's not just a defensive experience rescue opportunity, it's a real business opportunity. So because you're providing consistent experiences that you can add capacity for profitability, you can increase your food and beverage spend because you don't have that 6, 8, or 10% of rounds that are at risk of going over. You increase your pro shop spend, you improve return visits and marketing and return on investment, because if you're spending all your money on getting a player out and he's finally giving you a chance, and then he happens to be in that 8 or 10% that goes that hour over, and he doesn't have the time that he wants to have in the experience, that is not well-spent marketing money, and there's no return on investment, because what you want is for this player to have a great time and come back next week and bring his friends. So the opportunity is very real. And that really brings me to the end of our webinar. And I'm really grateful for the great questions that were asked. And there'll be a few minutes now for those of you who are still here. If you want to ask any more, we've got 4 more minutes on the program. I just want to bring your attention to next week. We're chatting about 10-player experience game changers for successful golf operations. I'm very fortunate to have Jim Lombardo join us, who's going to share some of the experiences that they've had at Erin Hills. So if you can make it, please register. And if you can't, register anyway, and we're going to send you the video of the highlights. Okay, shoot your questions over. There were many great questions already, but if you've got any more, feel free. And thanks everyone for those questions and answers. Malcolm, are you seeing any questions there?
No, I haven't seen any other questions. Sean's just asked a question.
Sean wants the contact info for Carnoustie. Absolutely, Sean. We will put you in touch. And you can discuss and share notes on the first tee. Yes, and the message they give to players. Absolutely, Sean. And I'm sure they'll be glad to chat to you as well, if you can understand them. This guy yeah, he's laughing at that. No, we'll gladly do that. Are there any more or other questions? Malcolm, any questions that we haven't answered that were popping up earlier?
No, but I think we've covered everything.
Okay, Sean is saying this has been great. Look forward to more sessions. Fantastic. Sean, would love to have you, because you had so many great points that you made here. We'd love to have you maybe co-present or come on and share some of your findings and your learnings. We'd love to give you the stage. Absolutely. Sure, he says. Fantastic. We'll book you. Thank you. And one of the things that I must also mention is that to have a person like Sean or like Jim is brilliant, because they are really the actual innovators in the space. It's not us. We're just providing a tool set and some tech ability and understanding, but the real innovators are those forward-thinking course managers that come up with ideas, and they come up with questions that we then go and look to answer. There's lots and lots that comes back from all the courses that we work with, and they're really the ones who making the system that we have better. So thanks everyone. Christoph saying thank you. Thanks to you in Spain, and everybody else who's taken the time. And we look forward to sending this to you, and maybe for those of you who can make it next week, Thursday, we're on again. And then we'll have Sean's on the line soon, I hope. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
Sean's got one last question.
Yeah, Sean is asking about the flow tracking. And Sean, maybe this is something that we want to tackle in a separate webinar. So the time tracking versus experience tracking versus flow tracking versus gap time tracking. This is something that we could really dig into some data and yeah, really look for some patterns and share that with everyone who would like to know. Great, we'll get you on for that if that's obviously a big topic for you. Thank you so much again. Really enjoyable today, and thanks for the great questions.